Hey everybody, Alex from SeemsGoodMagic.com here, joined by Travis Simulant Sowers. Travis, how's it going?
Cheers. Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we're here to talk about some Aether Revolt spoilers. Before we jump right into them, because there's only 10 spoilers to go through, so this will be relatively quick. We I wanted to go through Kaladesh, our experiences with Kaladesh, and I don't want to be overly critical because there are some cool aspects of Kaladesh, and there's also some bad aspects of Kaladesh. So before we get into the spoilers, let's talk about kind of our initial feelings when we played Kaladesh. Travis, you want to take it off? Like when the format first came out, how did you feel about it?
When it initially came out, I was excited to explore and see how aggressive it was going to be, how useful the vehicles were going to be. I was initially very skeptical that vehicles would even be playable. It seemed like bad equipment to me. I was interested to see exactly what Blue was trying to do because it wasn't intuitive to just look at the cards. And I was excited to find out how dirtily the Dirtle deck was going to be in this format. Like, am I going to be doing ridiculous things like the Clue Green deck from Shadows over Innistrad, or is this format going to be so aggressive like Zendikar that I don't have time for anything like that? So it was kind of I was excited to explore the format.
Yeah, and that's kind of how everybody is with brand new formats. This format was we knew there wasn't going to be a ton of different mechanics, right? Like some of these formats that come out, there's 5 mechanics. Like we've got Return to Ravnica right now online, and it's weird going back to a set that went into another set, and both of them had 5 mechanics. And it's just, and when Dragon's Maze comes out, I mean, you're dealing with 10 mechanic limited format. It's just there's so many
Yeah.
crazy directions to go. Now this one is 2 mechanics. You've got your basically the crew mechanic, and then, well, I guess you have fabricate. So I guess there's a little bit more, and then you've got the whole energy thing going,
Mhm.
which is like the alternate resource. They don't. There's not a lot of like overlap between those 2 mechanics too, fabricate and the energy production. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting to see where energy would go being an alternate resource. I remember at the beginning of the format kind of being very skeptical of energy, and through playing the format, I've done some stupid things with energy. But in the beginning of the format, it was kind of a goal for me on stream to see how much energy my opponent could have when I killed them with Pima Outriders, and I think the highest we got was 18.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of these cards that produce their own energy, they don't need an energy theme to be a good card.
Which is good.
Like Thriving Grubs, I didn't really care much about that card at the beginning of the format. I'm like, whatever, it's going to be, it can turn into a 3/2 attacker on turn 3. It's probably decent. I'm not super excited about it. By the end of the format, I was like super early picking it. I'm by the end of the format, I was just actively avoiding blue and avoiding white a lot, and just sticking to red, black, and green, and just looking for hyper efficient creatures, including even the colorless ones. Like you mentioned, the vehicles they've sort of became format defining for me. Like I
Certainly.
had to pick every freighter I saw. Sky Skiff just elevated huge in my estimation. Were you making the night market lookout deck very often?
That was not one that I did very often. That was a little too much all in for me. And I never really, so I didn't get to play with the Sky Skiff that much. But I mean, Renegade Freighter was certainly a format defining card.
Yeah.
And to your point about the Thriving Grubs, I think the best 3-0 deck I had during the draft format had 5 Thriving Grubs.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, this is sort of where we can lead into the next question here. When you first started experiencing issues with the format, when you first started realizing that maybe this format wasn't as fun as you initially had hoped it would have been.
Yeah, this is not a bad format. It's still Magic. I still enjoyed playing it. As we've come to the end of it, there's some formats where, like, when we were getting to the end of Shadows, I was like, no, I don't want Shadows to end. This was so much fun. I would still be playing Triple Shadows.
Yeah.
Original Innistrad, when they flashed that back, I played as many as I could. I don't believe I'll be playing the Kaladesh flashbacks. And it came from a factor of some of the cards were a little bit on the pushed power side, Renegade Freighter being a big one. Like there's always rares that you lose to, and it never feels good, but at least you can tell yourself, well, I would have won the game if they didn't have Wrath of God, or I would have been fine if they didn't open Pack Rat, whatever the card is. But when it's a common artifact that can go in every deck, it just kind of felt bad to get smashed to death by Renegade Freighters. And also given that it wasn't super complicated, like the crazy Dirtle deck's about the best you could do, or at least the best that I was able to put together, was doing silly things with Whirler Virtuosos, which was fun to do once or twice. But after I'd done it 5 times, I'm like, okay, I've done that, and I've made these aggro decks. And it kind of seemed like a weird version of Magic Origins, which was another format that was fine to draft for 2 months. But after that, I was kind of like, I don't really want to play this anymore. And then that's kind of where I ended up with Kaladesh. The top 10 set ever? No, but not like Magic is dying or this is terrible. Just like, okay, we played Kaladesh. I'm ready for the next set.
Yeah. I mean, those are all good points. I think we both have talked about sort of the pushed nature of the commons. Like we're looking at one right here, Dehund Operative in the format. You've got, monocolor. It's in black, which I believe historically, right alongside blue, has the least efficient creatures in the past. Now we've got a 2-mana common 2/2 that's often a 3/2 death touch. So that was incredibly pushed, I thought. The Foundry Screecher, I mean, I had decks with like 5 or 6 of those, and it's just, 3 mana, 3 power, evasive, at common, once again. So I really had a problem with these ultra-pushed commons, and I just kind of don't want this to be an ongoing trend, because, we talk about how the designers kind of have to make cards more powerful, or else people really aren't incentivized to be interested in the format, or at least that's their belief. So do you feel like this is going to be an ongoing trend? Or are we going to see hyper efficiency at common be more normalized?
Maybe not, but I've actually just clicked on, I think, what was a bigger deal, and I want to run this by you, because I'm not convinced that these cards are necessarily more pushed than, for example, the ones we saw in Origins. Like, if you think back to Origins, we had the 2/2 Vigilance that once it connected was a 3/3 Vigilance at common, and just Topin Freeblade.
I remember that. That's right.
Yeah, and there were a lot of cards at common that were very pushed for aggressive, right? But the entire format was aggressive. I think what happened here is we have some very pushed aggressive cards in a format that's also encouraging you to do these weird dirtily things. And it can lead you to some really bad beats. Like the classic mid-range decks that I typically like to draft aren't really viable here. You need to be going full aggro or full control. So it feels like they're presenting you with 2 options, and there's maybe a little bit less freedom in draft. Because, yeah, Doomed Operative is a fantastic card. So is the Foundry Screecher. They're still relatively easy to answer. Do I think that creatures will continue to be pushed? Yeah, but at the same time, removal is going to continue to get worse. So it's kind of like, as long as we both have our creatures that are pushed, we can still play this game. But I think that may be at the heart of what kind of turned me off to Kaladesh over time, was that there were kind of these 2 lines: go super dirtily or go super aggro, and both of those existing in the same format just made it feel kind of weird.
Yeah. That's a good point. Maybe I'm looking too much into the cards themselves and not enough into the format that they're in, which made them feel more pushed than maybe they actually were. That's a good point. But like I said, I really also think there's just a few problems with the format. It's the low amount of mechanics, I feel like, doesn't make for a large variety of different decks. And I feel like there was, at least I ended up noticing, a significant power disparity between colors. Like I said, I wasn't impressed with blue, and by the end I really wasn't even impressed with white. I basically just wanted to be black, red, or green, any combination of that. And I think that can cost a set if you're like us, where we're jamming drafts all the time. Then it really becomes more noticeable to us when it's like, well, I know I don't want to be in this color. I know I don't want to draft these cards. You end up just sort of falling into these patterns of drafting.
Mm-hmm. And it can seem very repetitive.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can get into Aether Revolt now. We've got 10 spoilers to get into. So let's do this. We'll start with a Johnny Unyielding because planeswalkers are cool. So
And
4.
it's a cat.
Yeah. Oh, I love cats, and I know you do too. Where's Dutch right now? I want to hear him squeak.
He is sleeping in a box.
All
It's
right, we
probably
won't
hard to
disturb
believe.
him. I understand. Okay, a Johnny Unyielding. So 4, a green and a white for a mythic 4 loyalty, a Johnny Planeswalker. +2, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. -2, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power, and then -9. Put 5 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, and 5 loyalty counters on each other planeswalker you control. So what do you think?
It's a planeswalker. It's going to be fantastic and limited. It suffers from, like, let's put it in realistic eyesight. Like, it's a 6-drop. You can't play too many of those. We don't know what the format's going to look like, how aggressive it's going to be, that sort of thing. But I mean, this card is fantastic. If there's a creature that you need dead, you can play this and make it dead. If you can then defend it, you can even kill something else. So worst case scenario, this is a 6-mana removal spell. We're already playing stuff like that. And it's got additional utility above that, like reveal permanents, right? So you get
non-land permanents,
basically,
yep.
Yeah, that's everything but instants and sorceries.
Which
so
green and white would have a lot of, we would assume.
Absolutely. So it's going to kill creatures, it's going to draw you cards, it's going to give you a mega anthem for your team. Every once in a while you're going to die with it in your hand because you got mana screwed, but don't make a deck that's entirely 6-drops and you should be fine. The card's fantastic. Also being green is helpful because presumably green will be able to splash the white part even if you're green-blue or green-red or whatever. So, I mean, thumbs up.
Yeah, in terms of limited applications, you're right. It's tough to go wrong with planeswalkers. There are a couple exceptions, actually. With Kaladesh, what was the red-blue one? We're probably close to the page on that.
Saheeli.
She got passed a couple times.
Yeah, but I take a little bit of exception here in that I think Saheeli was actually good if you were blue-red. I would first pick Saheeli, and I would play that card and be happy about it in a blue-red deck if blue-red was open. But there were other times where I first picked it, blue-red wasn't open, and I'd just move along with my life. But if you get some artifacts with come into play abilities, I mean, she was pretty close to draw a card every turn.
Okay.
I felt like it was a decent card. Best Planeswalker ever? No, but it still had the Planeswalker effect on the game. I think Tybalt was really our only unplayable Planeswalker.
Actually,
but I certainly think Ajani's better than Saheeli.
What about, another one that I swear I maybe saw at Wheel once or twice was the green-blue Kiora. Do you remember that one back?
I do.
Yeah, I feel like that one was not picked very highly at all either. So it's always strange to me to be in Limited and see a Planeswalker getting passed around. And you're like, how could this be getting passed? And then you read all the abilities and you're like, well, it's not exactly a broken Planeswalker, is it?
It's not broken, but they just have such an effect on Limited. If nothing else, because your opponent starts to panic, even if the ultimate isn't necessarily a game-winning one. Like, it's going to, at the very least, come in, have an effect, and then soak some damage. It's difficult not to at least get a 1-for-1 out of a Planeswalker. You can frequently get more than a card's worth of value.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do we think Johnny could possibly see constructed play for like a mid-range rampy deck?
Not being a constructed expert, I don't know. And I imagine that the format would change dramatically with the introduction of all of these new cards. Like, for a Planeswalker to be included in Standard, from what I understand, it needs to do a lot at 6 mana. But my Standard evaluation skills are nowhere near as good as yours. But I can say for Limited, this guy's going to be fantastic.
I've been out of the loop for a while on Standard as well, but I'm just thinking in terms of a mid-range deck, being able to answer threats, good. Being able to generate large amounts of card advantage, good. So it has 2 applications that a mid-range green deck would love to have. Historically, the other one, I'm trying to think, the Garrick, the 6-drop Garrick, that did end up seeing some constructed play in a mid-range deck too, I believe. The one that lets it cheat out green creatures and it also gets you card advantage. This to me seems kind of similar to that.
I could see that.
So Yes, in terms of limited, of course, Ajani's going to be fantastic. In terms of constructed, I could actually see it being like a one of in a constructed deck.
Yeah.
All right, so next we have Dark Intimations. So this is 2 and then Grixis, blue, black, red. It's a sorcery, it's a rare. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, then discards a card. You return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, then draw a card. And when you cast a Bolas planeswalker spell, exile Dark Intimations from your graveyard. That planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. Not super impressed with this one.
Yeah, it's kind of a lame ultimatum, huh?
Yeah, it is. It's like a neutered ultimatum with slight planeswalker upside to it.
Yeah, and it's hard to cast. I don't think from limited we're going to be fairly excited about this. Although if this turns out to be a grindy value format, I mean, this is what, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is a 4 for 1.
Yeah.
Like it is an edict, which kind of sucks. You don't get to pick which creature dies, but you're getting a creature back. Like it's a lot of value. So if it's a super slow grindy format, then this is fantastic. I think the best thing about this card is it's letting us know for sure Nikki B is coming back in the next set, and that's something I can be excited about.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking before we started recording here. I don't like it when slots in formats are made up of cards that affect loyalty counters or interact with planeswalkers, because this, for us sort of limited players, we're never going to see this come up. We're never going to, I mean, how often are you going to get a planeswalker and get Dark Intimations?
Well, unless he's in this set, I mean, and maybe he is, but if he's in the next set, you can't do it in limited.
Yeah, so I don't like it when they, I mean, that's just me being greedy, I guess, is selfish, because, and we were saying this before, it's like everything I want from a new set is, how is this going to be drafting this format? How is this going to be doing sealed? I don't care about the constructed applications. I don't think about them designing a set for new players to be able to comfortably come in and learn it. So yes, it's selfish, but I think there's a lot of people like me that really love to just draft new formats. And I know you're the same way. You love drafting.
Yeah, yeah. But I do at the same time appreciate that, you know, there's lots of different ways to play Magic, and I don't believe that my way is the only way. So there's somebody that saw this card and is like, oh my God, this is going to be so good for my Nicol Bolas EDH deck.
Yeah, it's a good
I mean,
point.
He was the original Elder Dragon. Like, I'm down with that. But so this card's not really for me. It's more for the constructed guy or the EDH gal or whatever. So I can appreciate that they're going to have some cards in here. Like there's some cards that we're looking at right now that I'm excited about. This just happens to not be one of them.
But to your point, I would much rather see this released in a commander deck than rather than a brand new format. But
sure.
Okay, next we have Battle at the Bridge. All right, so this has the new mechanic, or one of the new mechanics from this set. So we have Battle at the Bridge. It's a rare black sorcery. Black and X. Improvise is the mechanic. Your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1. Target creature gets -X/-X until in turn you gain X life. So just in terms of being a removal spell, I love this card. It's going to be great. It does exactly what you want. Kill something and buys you time. So that alone is really powerful. And the Improvise mechanic lets you deal with the big fat fatties for a lesser cost too.
Yeah, it's convoke for artifacts, and it looks like you can spend as much, like you can dump a lot of extra mana into this and at least gain some extra life. So if I'm killing a 3/3 and I've got 5 mana left over, like, hell, let's just gain 8 life.
Yeah, I wonder if this could see some constructed play as well for a control deck as like a 1 or maybe even a 2 of, just because, you know, this is exactly what a control deck in constructed wants to do as well. Kill something, gain life. Kill something, buy time. Even if you're not using the Improvise in constructed, I still feel like a mashup of those two abilities is just useful.
It certainly is. I think it's interesting that it's showing Deathwind as a similar card on the preview here.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems with Deathwind, which was a great card, it was kind of this without Improvise at instant speed without the life gain.
Yeah.
But one of the issues was you were almost always paying more mana for the thing you were killing than your opponent played to actually put it into play.
That's a good point because of the efficiency of the creature cost versus whatever their toughness was.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, if this is in a control deck, it might be as a one of. Like, again, I don't know standard enough. I know that I'm happy with just dump some mana into this kill a thing in limited. That's got me excited.
Yeah. I didn't even remember this Swallowing Plague card either. So at Uncommon, they had basically the same effect without Improvise, but it was 2 black in X.
Yeah.
I wonder how much play Swallowing Plague. It seems like I'd even be happy with that card at Uncommon too. I would have played that in limited all the time.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, Battle at the Bridge. Absolutely going to see a ton of limited play. And honestly, this is an example of a card that's totally worth splashing for. I would be happy to splash this card since in the late game it's going to do a lot for you anyway.
Oh, yeah, and gain you a bunch of life, too. I'm down.
Okay, next we have Pias Revolution. So this is another rare 2 and a red enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pias Revolution. Deal 3 damage to him or her. So I like the way the card reads. It reads like something that's like, oh my god, I'm going to be punishing my opponent, right? They killed my freighter, so now they're either going to take 3 or I get it back. But I think this is an example of a card where it's going to be a lot of do nothing a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting that you chose the phrase punishing there. There was actually the Punisher mechanic long ago where your opponent gets a choice, and all of those cards are just terrible.
Browbeat, that was an example of probably the best one, I think. And then there was like Book Burning, which like milled them unless they took 6. I know which cards you're talking about, though, definitely.
Yeah, whenever your opponent has a choice, that's not good for you. So I'm paying 3 mana for something that can't attack or block and only activates if my opponent's already killing my stuff. And even then, they can just be like, sure, you burnt my face.
Or sure,
so, like,
put it back in your hand. I'm going to win next turn anyway.
Yeah, like this is another card that's not here for me, and I appreciate that. But there's somebody that's going to make a stupid deck with like the Norin the Weary deck that's making 1 million tokens, and they're going to put Pia's Revolution in it, and then kill all their dude. Like, who knows what they're going to do with it?
Well, it doesn't work with tokens,
Oh, yeah,
unfortunately.
it doesn't work with tokens. Okay, I don't know who this is for, but it's not me. It's not me.
Yeah. So not the most exciting rare here, but this is going to be an example of the rare that I open 15 times and be like, oh man.
Viva la Revolution! Not so much.
Okay, next we have a Disallow. And now this looked eerily familiar to me when I read it, and now I know why, because if we look at the thesaurus here, it's a much easier to cast Void Slime. But it's 1 and 2 blue for a rare instant, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. I'm kind of actually excited for this counter spell because we were looking for something, at least I was. Obviously, we can't have a 2 mana counter spell come back in terms of hard counter. Nobody wants to see 2 mana hard counter come back. But at the same time, everyone's kind of tired of cancel because cancel is just not that good of a counter spell. It's hard to cast. Control decks and Constructed aren't super happy playing it. In Limited, are you really jamming cancel all that often? Maybe every once in a while, but you're not super happy about it. So to see something like this that has a lot of applications come back to Constructed, I think is going to be really interesting. I think this will definitely be seeing some Constructed play.
I think you might be right about that. From my perspective, as someone who's predominantly playing limited, this is not super dissimilar from cancel.
Yeah.
So I think this is here for the constructed players, and I think you're right. Perhaps it has enough flexibility to find its way into the constructed scene.
I think they've taken years to really test the waters to find the comfortable spot for counter spells, because it's constantly that balancing point of that's a feel bad counterspell. This counterspell is worthless. That's feel bad. This is worthless. It just keeps going back and forth. They can't find that sweet spot counterspell, and maybe this could possibly be it. Possibly.
It's also possible that there just isn't a sweet spot. That counterspells are either awful or wonderful, depending on your perspective. Like, it's almost like with those counter decks that there's so many fun points available in a game of Magic. And if you're playing counterspell for blue, you want all those fun points and want your opponent to have none. Like
Yeah, it's true. It's
there may
just
not be a sweet spot, but if there is, this is getting close to it.
I mean, you're right. The problem is the counterspell is so intertwined with what we know of blue that it's
Yeah.
not something they can just like abandon ship on at this point. It's kind of the color defining card or
Yeah.
effect, I should say. So I see where their difficulty is, but you're right. There is something that is just inherently feel bad about counterspells, isn't there?
It is, and it's weird because removal spells often do exactly the same thing, but you feel like, oh, well, they killed my guy, instead of, oh, I couldn't resolve my thing. It's like at least I get to put it on the table, and then they killed it. You're like, okay, fair enough, you killed my guy. It's doing the same thing. Like counterspells are often just worse removal from a limited perspective, but it still just feels bad when they counter your cool dragon.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, but maybe the commenters can help enlighten us on that one. All right, next we have Consulate Crackdown. So this is 3 and 2 white, a rare enchantment. When Consulate Crackdown enters the battlefield, exile all artifacts your opponents control until Consulate Crackdown leaves the battlefield. So Fiend Hunter for all artifacts. Feels more like a sideboard card, but honestly, I could see main decking this too. I guess it depends on how much artifacts are going to be played in Aether Revolt.
Yeah, got a feeling looking at these cards, it's going to be a lot. And since it's it's a one-sided destroy all your opponent's artifacts until they deal with this. Now, the downside, I suppose, is like a lot of the things that kill artifacts also kill enchantments. So this is still going to be vulnerable, much like Revoke Privileges was in the previous set. But this looks good enough to main deck for me. I don't know about good enough to first pick, but that's a very powerful effect.
Yeah, and it's just the token killer. If your opponent's playing the Thopter or the Servo deck, it's like, I don't care if you deal with Consulate Crackdown now. I already took care of your 5 servos.
They did, yeah.
So I assume this is going to be drafted the same way that we had with Eldritch Moon and Shadows over Innistrad, right? Where it's going to be 2 packs of Aether Revolt, 1 pack of... Okay, that's a little bit of a relief because that, I think, gives a chance for Aether Revolt to really sort of change, at least I'm hoping, change the format in a more positive direction, or at least make it so when we're drafting there's more things to do, or I feel like there's more to do.
Even if it doesn't, we've still got 2 months with new cards. That'll make it fun enough for us to go through and draft it. But I see what you're saying. Like Eldritch Moon was a completely different format than Shadows, so I'm excited to do something different.
Oh yeah, how did you end up? Just very briefly, how did you end up liking Eldritch Moon overall?
It was fantastic. I loved Shadows. I loved everything that Shadows did. I think Eldritch Moon was a little less fun than Shadows, but it was new and interesting enough that I was just happy to jam that, and was playing that up until the day that Kaladesh was released.
Okay, well that's good. That was
like, now I'm not really jamming Kaladesh on stream anymore. We're doing some cube and we're doing some flashbacks, and I don't think I'll be doing any more Kaladesh drafts. That was not the case with Shadows or Eldritch Moon.
Okay. Okay, next we have a Heart of Kirin. So here's the first vehicle from the new set. It's a 2-mana legendary vehicle artifact. It's got Flying and Vigilance. It's Cruise for 3, and you may remove a loyalty counter from a planeswalker you control rather than pay Heart of Kirin's crew cost. So alternate cost that will probably never come up in Limited, but is a 2-mana 4/4 Flying Vigilance crew 3 good? I think the answer is yes. Yes, it definitely is.
I think it is. I think this card looks a lot like Smuggler's Copter, which was a beating.
Yeah, I've had enough of that card to be perfectly honest. That was not a card I felt like. I never even got to draft it too. I only played against Smuggler's Copter.
I'm sorry, man. It's so much fun to play one. But one of the things that made that card so good was the 1 crew and the fact that it looted. And this having a higher crew cost and not looting for an extra +1/+1 means that it's not quite as miserable to play against.
Yeah.
It's like if you can kill it, at least it's gone and didn't generate additional value. And it's not like they're going to turn to it and then attack you with it every single time. some 3-drops can't crew this, I would imagine. That said, it still looks like a bomb mythic. It's colorless. It goes in every deck. I'm going to pick it. I'm going to play it.
Yeah, you're right. But you make a good point. I like Smuggler's Copter was just a rare, which easily could have been a mythic, I think, for how efficient it is. And I would say Copter at rare is better than this Heart of Kirin at mythic. So that's interesting to note. And it's a legend, too. Heart of Kirin's a legend, and Smuggler's Copter is not.
So if you ever drafted 2, you could just win that draft.
All right. Next we have Henny's Expertise. I saw a lot of people online sort of talking about this one. So this is 2 and 2 black sorcery, rare. All creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. What do you think?
So does this work where the top line resolves and then the second one does?
So, yeah, I'm not a level 1 judge or judge at all, but I believe everything on this card has to resolve all at once, right? Isn't that kind of how it works? So all creatures get -3/-3. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less. So when you cast this and it resolves, you immediately cast a card while they all have -3/-3. That must be how it is. You choose a card after this resolves.
Yeah, I think you get to play your dude and not have it die.
Is that right? So it everything gets -3/-3, and then you could have like a 3/3 creature come out.
I think so. If it does that, it's still just kind of okay. I mean, -3/-3 does kill a lot of things. I don't think from a limited perspective it really matters that much that you get to slam something else.
Yeah.
Because like if it's a format of 3/4s and 4/4s, that's the kind of thing like looking at this card by itself. I get more excited when an entire set is spoiled and I can look at all the commons. Because like there's always a Kelsey helped me with this in some of the set reviews. She'd look at all the cards, crunch them into a spreadsheet, and say the magic toughness for this format is 3. The magic toughness for this format is 4. Meaning, what's the average toughness you're going to see among creatures?
That's
if
great
it's a
thinking,
low toughness
actually.
format, this is going to destroy things.
Yeah.
If it's a high toughness format, it's going to be kind of marginally playable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even from a constructed standpoint, how important is that you may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less for like a control deck? Is this good enough for a control deck? Is paying 4 mana to possibly not deal with everything on board good enough?
And it's not killing anybody's vehicles. Like,
yeah,
cars are safe. So I don't know. It feels like kind of a bad. God, we had the 2 green black. I don't remember what it was called.
Oh, hazardous conditions. Is that?
Yeah, nobody ever played that.
Yeah.
And this is like one power and toughness more, which is certainly relevant, but like I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on this. It's cool. The art's really badass, but I'm just not. I'm not sold on this in limited yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm convinced either. I mean, it is no languish. It's funny they have this in the thesaurus. That -4/-4 was very, very important a lot of the time. So yeah, I was hoping one of these commenters kind of brought up whether what you said, you could get a 3/3 creature out there. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Yeah, God, I don't know.
I think it has to resolve before you can do that. But maybe we've got a judge watching and they can walk us through that interaction because it's going to matter.
Yeah, well, you're right. You're casting the card. Wait, you may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So it's not like until end of turn you may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand. Is this just while this spell is resolving, you may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less? Is that what it's saying?
I'm not sure. I know that in the example of like Cryptic Command, it resolves in the order that it's printed on the card. So that's what's making me think that first all creatures get -3/-3, and then you may cast a card.
Yeah, you're right. Well, sorry folks, we're gonna have to poll the commenters on this one. Not exactly sure exactly how this works. Okay, next we have Trophy Mage. Now this looks familiar, much like Trinket and Treasure Mage. We've got
Yeah.
the third, maybe final one. So 2 and a blue, uncommon, human wizard. When Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with convert mana cost 3, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I've always loved the Mage cards. They're fun. They're very fun to play. Treasure Mage was a lot of fun. I'm going to find my Worm Coil engine, eat this. And Trinket Mage was always great. You know, I love that Trinket Mage in Limited always kind of made you actively seeking 1 or 0 mana cost artifacts that you probably maybe wouldn't even ordinarily play just for the value. You just want the value so bad that it's like, I'm going to go find that 0 mana cost equipment that's not that good.
You could get your spell bombs. So, and the spell bombs were okay in that format. So, like, I feel like Trinket Mage had its day in the sun.
Yeah, that's true. What was it originally printed in? It was very old school, I thought, right? Where was it?
Yeah, I only remember playing with it in Mirrored and Besieged.
Okay. Thought it was older than that. I'm pretty sure it is, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, that's a good point. The spell bombs, and then Treasure Mage was actually in the Worm Coil engine set, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it really was like made for that. So what do we think about this Trophy Mage? What are the 3 mana cost artifacts that we should suspect that we're going to see? Are we going to see the new line of like key runes or signets at 3 mana?
I mean, you can get a Renegade Freighter. Like, I think the tutor facet of this card is colossally fantastic. Like, make sure you have a couple 3-drop artifacts. It's going to be great. Even if you're just playing like the 3 mana 3/2, like just getting a 2-for-1 is fantastic. The only thing I would caution people about with this card is in New Phyrexia, a 3 mana 2/2 was fine. That was a reasonable body. From everything we've seen in Kaladesh, a 3 mana 2/2 is not a reasonable body.
Yeah.
So the body does not have as much value in this format as the other mages did previously. Now, again, I don't know everything about Aether Revolt, so maybe things have changed dramatically and a 3 mana 2/2 is fine. I kind of doubt it, though. So I think you're going to be leaning a little heavier on the tutor facet here than you were before. Because, like, if you played your Trinket Mage and you'd already drawn your Spell Bomb, it wasn't like game over, you lose. That may be the case with the Trophy Mage.
Yeah, you're right. It's totally going to hinge on how efficient are the other creatures in Aether Revolt and how is that going to change the format.
Yeah, and I anticipate they're going to be better than things were in New Phyrexia and Mirrored and Besieged.
Yeah. Okay, next we have Scrap Trawler. 3 mana, rare artifact creature construct. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost. When I first read this card, I was super impressed. I'm very impressed with this card. I could grant that maybe I'm overrating it, but it just feels like a card that is asking to either be broken or just keep giving you value. It seems like a very annoying card to play against, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly has a lot of potential value stapled to it. It's interesting that they're showing Workshop Assistant there because that's the card. I did a little bit of a review with Dave on Men for Moto about this. And I said, like, the problem with Workshop Assistant wasn't what it did when it died. It was that it wasn't a relevant creature while it was in play. And Scrap Trawler is the fixed version of that.
Yeah.
By bumping it up to rare, you get a body that's reasonable and an effect that, while not necessarily game-breaking and limited, looks like it could certainly be strong. The fact that it's colorless also makes it a relatively easy pick because it'll slot into any deck. The challenge is a 3/2 is not relevant for the entirety of a game.
Yeah.
The fact that its ability can be, I think, bumps this up to a card I'm excited to play with as well.
And could you see yourself first picking this in draft 2? I kind of can. It's colorless, so it leaves you completely open. It's efficient enough. So I could easily see first picking this card, too.
Me too. I think there's hopefully removal spells that I would want over it, but out of a pack without those, then yeah, I could see first picking this.
Yeah. Have we even seen much in the removal department? Yeah, mostly at rare, though. All right, final spoiler here. We have Quicksmith Rebel. 3 in a red, rare, human artificer. When Quicksmith Rebel enters the battlefield, target artifact you control gains tap. This artifact deals 2 damage to target creature or player for as long as you control Quicksmith Rebel. This card seems like it's a real beating in Limited. Absolutely. Shock
Yeah.
effect on a tap is insane.
Yeah, and all you need to do is have an artifact in play. This card looks great. I mean, it is vulnerable to all of the removal that everything else is, but it's worth it for that effect. Um, Depending on the amount of instant speed removal that's in the format, you might want to wait to play something like this until your opponent is tapped out. It's also worth noting that it doesn't give the artifact haste. So if you've played an artifact in the same turn, you can't use it right now. So what I think what you want to do is get an artifact in play, then play this and be able to use it immediately to make sure you get your value. And then if they don't kill it, it should take over a game.
That's a great point. Are there any lifelink or death touch artifacts? Because this would interact so positively with those. I'm not sure if I can't think of any immediately, but I feel like there are.
We've got Narnum Cobra and we've got Prakata Filler Bug.
Yeah, you're right. So those would be just excellent alongside this card.
Yeah, Jund Life, man. I would be up for that.
So even outside of that insane value, this card is just very, very strong. And 3/2 body for 4 is nothing to write home about, but attached to this ability is very good. And it's an Artificer, so you can jam your... you know what's kind of cool about this card?
Combos with Goggles.
Yeah, it actually does work really nice with Goggles, right? Because once the Goggles are equipped, you can just tap your Goggles, and it's still buffing your Artificer.
God.
That's pretty nasty, actually. A 4/4 beater that can just ping for 2 as well.
Just in time for the holidays, Magical Christmas Land has arrived.
All right, Travis. Well, thanks for doing the initial 10 spoilers with me. For folks wondering, I'm planning on doing the remaining spoilers with Jamie. I suppose I should probably run that by her.
It's a good idea.
Now, I think she mentioned it before. She was interested in doing some sort of collaborative set review thing. So look forward to that over the next coming months. Obviously, we're still super early. There's only been 10 spoilers, but I just wanted to get the jump on this and get both me and Travis's perspective so you can kind of see where we're at right now with Kaladesh and what we're kind of looking for with Aether Revolt. If you want to check out Travis, please go to twitch.tv/Semulin. That's SEMULIN. You can also follow him on Twitter @Semulin. And Travis is streaming all the time. He's gaining viewers all the time. He is beloved on SeemsGoodMagic and on Twitch. So check him out for sure. He's hilarious. He's an entertaining drafter. He always keeps you engaged, and he has a great mind for the game too. I love that. I think the quality that I admire most about Travis as a drafter is his need for patience. He's very good at being a patient person when everything is going wrong. He's very good at staying patient. And your old pal Alex sometimes has problems with that, but Travis is just great at that. I think that's the mental toughness of Magic that really defines the good player from the great player, is the one who can roll with punches in the real bad spots that you're in any given game.
Thank you for the high praise, Alex. Thank you for inviting me to do this with you. And thank you for all the work that you do on Seems Good Magic. I mean, you are the hardest working individual as far as Magic draft casting goes. There's always a video. There's always something you can come watch. And I appreciate all of the effort that you've put into this site and being able to partner with you to provide content for it. So thanks to you as well. Thanks for kicking ass, man.
Thanks, Travis. All right, folks. Well, hopefully I'd like to do some more collaborative stuff with Travis, and maybe eventually we'll do the full Seems Good Magic crew. We'll have to see how that goes. Travis made a good point that might be too many cooks spoiling the pot on that one. Maybe too many people talking at once and stuff like that. But this worked great, so I'd like to do stuff like this more in the future. Check Travis out. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.